Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the 5 most common exercises that may be causing neck pain or discomfort when your clients are doing these particular exercises. And then also talk about how we can make some modifications in their biomechanics to help them to alleviate the discomfort as best you can when you're training them. So let's go ahead and get started looking at neck discomfort during training. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of clients that I haven't seen complain about neck tension or discomfort while they're doing certain exercises. And there's a reason for that. Generally, the understanding is that when you're looking at the muscles of the upper back of the trapezius, the levator scapula, sternocleidomastoid muscles, those are the guys that are collecting all of that tension during the day as a client is going through the normal daily activities. And the shoulders will elevate and you'll get that scapular, what's known as scapular elevation, i.e. that shrugging maneuver that occurs. Now, remember, over time, those muscles tighten up, particularly the trapezius, and then cause trigger points and other pain issues. Another common reason why we see pain or discomfort while people are exercising is because of the simple fact that they have poor posture. And if you take a look, for instance, at this particular, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw for you, just give you a little idea what we're talking about here. Good posture right there. The head, of course, can flex, or the neck can flex, and the neck can extend. These are called the cervical extensors, and up underneath here, this guy's chin right there, are the cervical flexors. Depending on a person's posture, if they have poor posture, you see what's known as a forward head lean. The chin juts forward, and that's where you're going to see problems. And look, people are going to come to you with those issues, just like up here with the trapezius, right? People are going to come to you, train with you, that already have pre-existing issues. However, there's certain exercises that will exacerbate those problems first, right? Just the exercises, the nature of the exercise itself. And then the second is going to be biomechanically in proper form or technique. So the reasons for discomfort in the neck. Now, this is during training. People will come to you for training and already have poor posture. They'll already have trigger points in their neck. But the reasons during the exercise are going to be generally related to the type of exercise, such as curls, lateral, yes, even curls, lateral raises, dumbbell presses, like shoulder presses, obviously, like you see in this picture, bent rows, bent over rows, either with dumbbells, barbell, any type of rowing movement in one sense. And then, of course, crunches, and that's related to the physical pulling of the neck. And then, of course, as I said, improper biomechanics. When you look at an exercise, for instance, like the one you're seeing here in this picture, the thing you've got to keep in mind is that dumbbell presses, even with a barbell, the big issue that you're going to see is generally related to right here. Okay, now I'm circling the shoulder itself. And basically what happens is the shoulder girdle, right? That is the movement. If you look at my shrugging movement here, that movement is the shoulder girdle, meaning the entire complex of the scapula and the shoulder joint itself, right? The glenohumeral joint. So that entire complex is elevated by different muscles, of course, the largest one being the trapezius on either side. And that's where you would be concerned when you're looking at an individual to ensure that these areas are pulled down, right? And the way we normally cue people to do that, here's your tip, is simply tell them to lift up the rib cage and pull the shoulder blades back and down. And generally, as they lift their chin up, you can see that individual has his chin tucked down slightly. That's going to collapse the rib cage. You want to get them to lift the chin up, have a neutral head position. And when they lift up their rib cage, the shoulder girdle actually retracts and goes back and down. Generally, that will actually take away the discomfort or that higher level of tension that is developing. Another exercise like I said, were curls. And quite often we just see poor biomechanics to begin with on curls, meaning that the shoulder girdles are forward. There is an internal rotation, possibly. And in the case of you see in this picture, the individual is leaning forward. So there's an entire forward lean, which of course is going to put an undue level of stress now on the trapezius muscles themselves. Why? Because now, in general, the shoulder girdle is leaning forward and down, and that's now forcing the trapezius to pull up and back this way. And because of that, you're going to feel undue levels of stress. The other thing about this particular issue, and by the way, it's going to be the same thing. You simply have your client lean back up into a straight, right, position with the shoulder girdle pulled back and the rib cage lifted up. It just makes it easier when you're in an upright position versus being forward. The other thing is that the weight of the head is actually, because it's forward, the weight of the head is actually amplified. There's an increased torque on the cervical extensors now because the head is out of alignment. It's not straight up and down. The torque is increased on the cervical vertebrae. Once again, what do? We have our clients lift up their chin and pull their head back into proper posture, which is basically essentially the ears in line with the shoulder itself. And that should essentially alleviate that problem. The idea is not to do dumbbell curls and lift up the shoulder girdle. It's to relax the shoulder girdle back down. And that's one of the ways you would do this. By the way, in this scenario, I actually do an offset. I'll have people, my clients have their feet together and then put one foot forward. And that allows for the client to kind of lean into it a little bit while maintaining the appropriate lift in the rib cage. So that's one of the things you just got to keep in mind when you're doing a dumbbell curls. Here is the one exercise, of course, that I've seen cause more issues and more problems than any other, and it's simply the lateral raise. Why? Because the resistance is so far away from the pivot point, which is the shoulder joint, that you have this increased or high level of what we call torque, which is basically just that feeling of resistance on the muscle that a person has. But torque itself is kind of maximized when the arm is straight out this way. And by the way, that weight, the weight of the dumbbell, the weight of the arm, all of that is going to put stress onto the stabilizing effect that the trapezius is always going to be in to maintain the shoulder girdle. Once again, really, really simple cueing that I have people go through, which is I get them to relax the shoulder girdle down. Well, how do you do that? One of the best ways to do it is to take those dumbbells or whatever they're holding. Now she's holding just weighted balls, and that's fine. Doesn't matter what the resistance is. And I simply have them move them forward in front of the body slightly. And what that does, well, it does a couple of things. It allows for better movement, better biomechanics of lifting up the rib cage. And when that happens, the elbows come in front of the body slightly, and that allows them to do what? Drop the shoulder girdles, because that's generally where that tension that they're feeling up here is coming from, is because they don't even realize it, is they're elevating the shoulder girdle. They're shrugging ever so slightly, and it's that ever so slight shrug that's causing the stress and the pain in the neck region, cervical region. And by the way, they can feel it all the way. I've had clients that tell me they feel it literally right up into the very base of the skull itself, not just their trapezius. Do they have weak traps? Sure. But again, the biomechanics of the exercise affords you the ability, right, to shift the position of the kinetic chain, right? And normally what I do is I have people just simply, you can see what I'm doing here in the picture of me, is I'm simply moving my arms forward slightly. Another thing you can do is bend the elbows a little bit more. Keep in mind, the ultimate goal with any of these exercises and positions is to get the shoulder girdle to drop down. And again, best way to do it is to lift up the rib cage, pull the shoulder blades back and down. And the way we can do that here with lateral raises is to simply get that shoulder girdle up, move the dumbbells forward slightly in front of the body. And you'll notice, and again, head positioning, no turning of the head side to side, up and down, neutral position, and that should work for your client. Now, quite often we miss this exercise. We miss this exercise. Our clients will go through either single arm dumbbell rows, double arm, as you see here, or barbell rows, right? Obviously, with a barbell or any other resistance. Now, you can actually see this. You can actually see this and issues related to this, even if you're doing basic cable rows or any other type of rowing movement. But the reason why we generally see it with this particular exercise is take a look at her body position. The torso, which should be leaning forward more, and this is a big issue that I see with clients, is the torso now is too far up. Okay, I hope you see this. And because the torso on this position is up, guess what happens? Well, now there's a lot more stabilization required from the shoulder girdle. But if the client leans forward more, then the stress now is going to go more into the lats. So you can see with an exercise like this, not only are they feeling tension and stress in their shoulder girdle because they're lifting and pulling up like this, if you can see this position, instead of keeping the shoulder, not only are they feeling that up in their traps and their upper traps, but they don't feel it in their lats, which is where the exercise is supposed to be felt. So again, what do? Get the client to lean forward a little bit more while maintaining appropriate biomechanics of the rib cage. Again, lifting the rib cage up, pulling the shoulder girdles back and down. In exercises like this, as soon as I find my client is just unable to get the proper biomechanics, I just put one dumbbell down, just do single arm dumbbell rows, or you can try it with a bar. At some point, I don't want to keep beating my client over the head to get them to do the biomechanics correct. Normally, if I go into a single one-arm row, I can now get them to modulate their body position to get that torso, which needs to lean forward more. So this individual, if I draw a straight line, you can see that that's the angle of her torso. That is way too high of an angle. It needs to be more like this, which means that individual needs to lean forward more, which will put the stress lower down and then back into the lats. But again, you don't want them shrugging or pulling the shoulder girdle up, because that's simply going to be stressing and putting more strain, obviously, on the trapezius. And here, last but not least, is the crunch. Now you can see where's the problem here. Well, what's this individual doing? She's pulling. This is the most common issue that we see. She's literally pulling her neck. Well, of course, you're going to feel stress and pain in your neck when you do this. By the way, this is fine to roll forward, right? You got to roll forward to get the abdominals, rectus abdominis to contract. But this is it right here, right? There's the no-no. And people are constantly complaining. Now, by the way, they'll also feel it in the front. Why? Because the cervical flexors now are coming into play. So there's a balance. And so the idea is, if you look at this individual, what do you notice? Well, she's not tugging on her head, but she's also doesn't have her hands out here. They're just touching slightly on the head to make sure that it's all abdominals and it's not pulling this way. Remember, it's the pulling that puts the stress on the cervical extensors in particular. So in abdominal crunches or any other abdominal exercise movement where you have to have the chin tucked forward slightly, do so without pulling the head forward. Now, once again, if people are complaining neck pain in the front, which is where you would see it, and when it would be on a crunch, that's simply because they are working those muscles. You know what the problem is? Is because they're not tucking forward enough. Ironically, well, it's not ironic, but remember, when you train abdominals, you have to actually reverse the biomechanics that we talk about with other exercises. With other exercises, you want to keep the rib cage up. But when you do abdominal training, the whole goal is to flex the spinal column. So it's the exact opposite. Instead of keeping a neutral head position, right, you can actually tuck your chin down. If you keep the chin tucked up, and I've seen this, we see it all the time. Yeah, some folks, they do their crunches and they lift way up like that. So you can see me doing this. There's nothing wrong with that, unless what happens? My client says, I feel that more in my neck. We'll tell them, Guess what I tell them to do? Okay, instead of coming up straight like that, simply tuck your chin down. And when they do that, the level of stress on those cervical flexors, particularly the sternocleidomastoid mastoid muscles, right, ends up going down. And voila, for the most part, that's going to alleviate those issues. Please keep in mind, we want to help you with your clients to get the results that they're paying for. If you like the material that we do in these videos, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And also remember that there's notifications. You can click that as well, so you know when these videos are coming out. So go ahead, subscribe. There is a lot of material, a lot of content that we're going to be getting out to you from a training perspective, not just the science and the nutrition, but the business as well. So make sure you come back often and check out all the materials we have at Body Design University. Appreciate you coming on board. If you have any questions, you go ahead and message them directly to me, Doug Blake. I'll be more than happy to respond to you. Thanks. Have a great day.